Greetings and welcome back to my channel. It's great to have you back here today at the Jazz Record Center in New York City, where I can be found every Saturday when I happen to get enough sleep, which I did not get last night because I ate the strangest food. You gotta be careful. Don't eat weird food. So 10 tips for estimable record collecting. I'm a very successful record collector, you could say. I have thousands of records, primarily jazz records, but also quite a few rock records, quite a few prog rock records. I'm a huge fan of old prog rock, which is what led me into jazz. But we're going to talk about record collecting and how you can become a successful record collector. And by that, I don't mean like records worth lots of money, because the great thing about record collecting, about going to record stores is, particularly if you go to record stores, you can find so many records that are just cheap. In any genre, but specifically in jazz, I would say, because it's such an under-acknowledged genre. But before the records comes the turntable. Now, if you're new to record collecting, you will hear people like me talking about very expensive record players. I review very expensive record players, but I've reviewed everything from a $200 U-turn Orbit turntable to most recently a $70,000 J. Sikora turntable, which was like the Red Sea parted and I walked through. That turntable, don't let anybody tell you that the more money you pay doesn't mean anything. What you essentially get for more money in a turntable, and I mean from $200 up to like $1,000, generally speaking, you get better quality parts, you get materials that are better at damping vibrations, you get a tone arm that is better made to track records more correctly, and there is a correct way to track records. And you get more options how to set up the tone arm. You get VTF, vertical tracking force, which is pretty common. VTA, which is fairly common, vertical tracking angle. You want the tone arm to, generally speaking, be parallel with the record surface. And stylus rake, which is the angle of the cantilever. And I've only recently, I'm no Mike Trey, but I've only recently really realized that you want to get a close-up view of the side of the cartridge to see how the cartridge is sitting if it's perpendicular to the record. It really gets insane. It can really be intimidating for people who are new to this. But if you figure that back in the 50s, this was not seen as a bizarre hobby. It was a very ordinary sort of hobby. It was just a very popular hobby. It shouldn't be daunting at all. Even right through the 70s, you'd buy a turntable that was pretty much all set up and raring to go. My first turntable, oddly enough, was a Bang & Olufsen turntable that I bought from a guy who made parts for NASCARs. But then I also had a Garrard record player, which you could stack records on. The records would drop, which was really horrible for records. But it's important to have a good quality turntable. And as I said, a U-turn Orbit is a great turntable. They have sold over 100,000 of those turntables since 2008 because they're inexpensive, they're very well made, they are upgradable, and they're made in America, USA. So, it's just important to have a decent turntable if you're serious about your collection. And you want to make sure the turntable is level. You want to make sure your tone arm is set up correctly. All those good bits and bobs I should probably talk about in another video. My first tip in buying records, any sort of records, is go to your local record store. Shopping online is great. Joining the Tone Poet Society is great. I love Chet Kassem and Analog Productions. I think Vinyl Please just went down. Is that right? But there's nothing like going to a record store when you have some time on your hands and just flipping through the records and seeing what's there. You will find gems you did not know exist. If you get into a particular artist, there are things, this happens to me all the time. I mean, we have a wealth of record stores here in New York, but there are a wealth of record stores everywhere these days, I believe. Every record store known to man that sells used records will go through periods when they have tons of great stuff, then they'll have tons of nothing. Right now we have tons of nothing in the store right now. But people still keep coming in. But we have two big collections coming in. So yes, go to record stores. No matter what genre you're looking for. I'll take a side note. It's funny, before the vinyl resurgence, you would see like copies of Fleetwood Mac's Rumors on street corners. Now a clean copy of that goes for some kind of money. 101, record collecting 101. When you go, you see a record you want, pull the record out. I'm going to show you the proper technique and how to pull out a record from a sleeve. I'm like, how do I do this exactly? I tip it out with my finger right there and my thumb right there. We never touch the grooves. We never touch the record surface. We flip it in our hands and we inspect it under the light. Now, if it's shiny, if it has high luster, as Fred calls it, and it looks nice, it will play nice. Now, even if there are something called hairline scratches, they're really hairline marks. If you run your finger over that mark, if your finger doesn't feel it, neither will the stylus attached to the cartridge, attached to the toner. This is a truism. There aren't many certainties in life, but this is one. Fingers, only on scratches. I also check the spindle hole for spindle marks. If there's a shit ton of spindle marks, that record's been played a lot, but it still could be really, really clean. Someone could have paid a lot of attention to it. So 101, check out your records. And along the same line, appearances can be deceiving. There's one store here in the city that likes to put all their records in those little Japanese sleeves that I despise. The resealable Japanese sleeves. So you would think that means that all their records are pristine and mint. They're not. So you have to check the record. Conversely, there's another store in New York City that puts really valuable records up on the wall with no outer sleeve, with the record in the inner sleeve jammed inside the record, which is always sort of startling when I see it, because you really want to protect records. The valuable records now are only going to become more valuable. We get new people in the store all the time looking for records who are newbies, get them all the time. And it's fun. We had a guy in here a couple weeks ago, this Mexican dude. You could tell he'd been drinking all day. The guy was wrecked. And he was like, sell me some records. So I went around the store and he started pulling out records. I already have that, something else. The guy bought like $500 worth of records. I was kind of shocked. Once again, don't judge a book by its cover. Always clean your records before you play them. Now, ideally, you have a fancy ultrasonic cleaning machine or a nice vacuum cleaning machine like I have from Project, or at least a spin clean or a record doctor. But once the record is clean, get a nice brush so you can have a light on the vinyl as it's spinning so you can see how much dust is there. You'd be amazed how much dust can be on your records. But just get a good brush. I like the Hunt EDA brush. There's a great Audiophile brush. Lately, people have started using these big brushes that look like old style shaving brushes. And I love it because they're silky and they cover the entire record surface. So you want to just put the brush on there as the record's spinning and slowly take off the dust once you've already cleaned your record. Anyways, always clean your records. Even if they're cleaned the first time, even if you get a brand new record, you should clean it. And you can just take a soft microfiber cloth, put your record on a surface with a towel or something. And here at the store, a combination I've always used for a long time is 95% distilled water, 2.5% rubbing alcohol, and 2.5% of something called Kodak Photo Flow, which helps the goo, the cleaning solution, to spread out over the record. Anyway, a few squirts of that. Gently rub the record in one direction with that little goop. Do the same thing on the other side, and you can set the record in like a dish strainer or something to let it dry. Now, when you do that kind of basic cleaning, you may very well have water spot droplets on it that dry. But the next thing up from that is like a $40 or $50 spin cleaning unit. I'll put a photo up, which works pretty well for what it is. You can get, I think the Record Doctor after that is the most inexpensive but still really quality way of cleaning records before you get into real money, like $1,000 or $1,500 for a VPI vacuum cleaning machine, or a VPI, rather a Project VCLAU2, which is what I have, which is a really great suction machine that has a clamp. The record goes in forward and reverse. You can clean it in both directions. That's really fabulous. So clean records are a must, my friend. Always use protective sleeves. Now the way I store records, and I'll show you here, I put the album in an outer sleeve, then I put the record in a protective polyurethane sleeve behind that. As records get older, they don't get bigger, they shrink. We get people here in the store who buy expensive old records and try to shove the record into the sleeve. You're going to split the seam right away, and it's plus when you just store the record behind the album jacket, you can get it out easily. And also when you slide that configuration into a rack, since the opening is faced up, the sleeve doesn't come off the record as you're pushing it in. No, proper storage is always important. Always store your records vertically. I went up to a friend's house a couple of weeks ago. I set up a turntable and set up a system. A really great jazz writer named Ted Pankin, one of the best jazz writers out there. And I was going to sort of appraise his records for the store to buy, which the store didn't ultimately buy. But we went downstairs and all the records were stacked like pancakes. I was, oh my God, this is not going to be good. Because records, have a center, and the vinyl is very soft, very malleable. So if you put all this pressure on it, they will warp. And quite a few of the records that I took as payment were warped. So always stack your records vertically, stack them in a smooth place. Try to have them straight up, which means having a lot of records in one rack so they're all straight. And records will probably outlast you if you take really good care of them. Organizing your collection. How do I organize my collection? Some people, like Dan the Jazz Shepherd, organize everything by the label and then the chronological order of the releases in the label. I do that with some labels. I do that for Impulse. I do that for Blue Note. But I do for everything, because there are a lot of jazz labels that don't have a ton of releases. So I primarily do everything alphabetically by the last name, even within the label. Another great way to buy records, and many people are aware of this, and a great way to sort your collection to know what you already have, is to create a list of your records on Discogs. We used to have a drummer come in here all the time, really fantastic drummer, who moved to the UK. So he can just pull it right up. He had one of those little Mac mini books. He could bring it all up, and he knew exactly what he had, so he didn't buy doubles, which is something I'm criminally known to do. But Discogs is also a great resource for buying used records. I'm going to go on there today and buy some Sarah Vaughan records on Mainstream. She did 3, and they are funky as fuck, man. I couldn't believe it. I was a kid. You see Sarah Vaughan on PBS all the time, and I just didn't dig her. I love early Sarah Vaughan with Roy Haynes. That's really fantastic. But on Pablo, she's older and too much vibrato. But these records on Mainstream in the early 70s, they're so funky. I think they're cut in LA. I think John Guerin's on drums. Probably guys from the Tonight Show band of the early 70s, which are the Tops. And there's nowhere else to find those records. I mean, I found one in the store. I've never seen her other records on Mainstream, so I'll get them off Discogs. Discogs is a fantastic service. I've never been burned. The sellers are all very honest in their ratings, generally speaking. And if somebody has good feedback, you can generally trust them. It's always good to have a record brush. And I've made videos kind of decrying Record Store Day. I believe people are a little tired of the 3 LP sets costing $85. We still have quite a few Emily Remlers here. That's an extreme version. Record Store Day offers some great records you will never see again. All the Bill Evans records that Zev Feldman have done, except one, have been terrific. The audio quality is terrific. You won't see those records again. They'll only go up in value. They're all numbered. So I would say, and the upcoming Record Store Day has some really wonderful titles on it, particularly in the jazz world. And also it's really good for record stores, for you to support Record Store Days at these stores. And it's good for the sellers, obviously. But most importantly, maybe you'll never see these records again, and some of them are really cool. The last one had a Charles Tolliver record, which was fantastic. Corey Weeds at Reel to Reel did a great Shelly Manne record. He did a tremendous Pepper Adams record. Man, that's a killing record. He did the Roy Brooks records. Those are just phenomenal records that have gotten The Roy Brooks in particular, I think the 3 LP set has really gone up in value because that's a tremendous record, which sort of reveals Roy Brooks as part of the whole spiritual jazz thing, not just a guy playing hard bop. So yeah, keep Record Store Day in the back of your mind. Check it out. And the main thing is just to have fun, man. It's a great adventure. It's a great privilege to be able to buy records. I had Alex Halberstadt over the other day. He was listening to these Audio Note field coil speakers I'm reviewing, which are absolutely unbelievable, beautiful sounding, rich, clean, natural sounding speakers. And he made the point that obviously listening to records for many of us older geezers, is a solitary thing, as is record collecting, but it doesn't have to be, and it didn't used to be. Think about the days before TV, before hi-fi. People listened to radio. They gathered around the radio and listened to the news of the day, to all these entertainment shows, and they experienced that as a family. And I believe, if you buy a Billie Eilish record, the whole family could sit down and listen to that. I think the Billie Eilish records are fantastic. I also think the SZA records, SZA, I love her as much as I do Billie Eilish. She comes up with the most beautiful melodies. I heard a song today in the deli, something about Saturn. Good Lord, what a great song. That just blew me away. I followed SZA for a while. I think she's like the modern day Aretha. She's a wonderful singer. She writes great songs. But I digress. I think listening to records can be a family affair. So, make it a day of it. Let's all go record shopping. Just go to a store, that has and most record stores have both used and new records now. So there's a lot to listen to, a lot to enjoy. And thanks a lot for watching my channel one more time.